My guest this week is a former professional wrestler, movie star, television host, author, and former governor of Minnesota, Governor Jesse Ventura. Welcome to the Rubin Report.
Great to be on the Rubin Report. It's far too long since we talked to each other.
It's been a while. Now, first off, we've done this a couple times as I've bounced around from networks and you've bounced around. But first off, are you off the grid right this moment?
No, I'm right this moment in the heart of Manhattan, so that's hardly off the grid. No, I'm in the middle of a book tour, and I had to fly to New York, and I'll spend 4 days out here doing the massive publicity stuff that you do with every book. And then I'll go back to Minnesota, and then I've just signed a new contract with Russian Television America, so I'll be getting ready to do 32 shows for them. We'll crank out 8 of them, and then I'll go to Mexico, and then at some point I'll do 8 more. And we haven't figured out exactly when, where, and how yet, but it won't be off the grid because now that I work for Russia, they don't have the political pull and the paperwork to do the show from Mexico. So it can't be off the grid anymore. I'll be doing it from Minnesota, which of course is on the grid.
Right. Now, what kind of red-blooded American that I know you are could work for Russia?
Well, that's a question I'm going to ask in my first show. I want to know what Russia's done now to make us hate them so bad. I mean, they were our allies in World War II. They fought side by side with us. In fact, they took the brunt of World War II against the Nazis, and yet before the war was even over, they were our enemy. Well, I realized why finally. I read a book on Allen Dulles, if you know who he was, former head of the CIA.
Yep.
Well, think about it a minute. Wall Street ran our country back then. What is Wall Street's biggest fear? Socialism. Well, Wall Street would rather get in with fascists and Nazis than they would socialists. And that's how I determined why, before the war was even over almost, allies to my father were now our enemy. And so I want to know now that they're not socialist anymore. I was there in December. They are full-blown capitalists. In fact, they've embraced capitalism so strongly. In Moscow, every store is open 24 hours a day.
Wow.
Now that's embracing competition and capitalism. So now that they're capitalists, why do we still want a war with them? Wait, as a joke, I said, wait a minute, because they're capitalists and they're even white.
So they've got everything going for them.
They got everything going for them, you know? And I would like an answer as to why we continue to build up to another Cold War. The only answer I can come up with is feeding the industrial war complex.
Yeah, isn't that ultimately what so many of our decisions ultimately come down to? That there's just so much money out there that we always need a new enemy. And not to say, look, Putin's doing some strange stuff in Ukraine, obviously, and some other places, but that we're always looking for another enemy just because that is the money machine.
Yeah, we are now a culture of war. I mean, take a look on TV. You see Arnold Schwarzenegger doing those commercials for the video game.
Right.
We glorify war. We've decided that people that go to war are heroes and need to be glorified. Well, my first question is, how is killing someone else a hero? And it brings up a great point that I did on Off the Grid. I raised the question, who's more powerful, God or government? Well, clearly government is, because God says, thou shalt not kill. There's no asterisk there. It's simple. Thou shalt not kill.
Right.
Yet, if you kill on government's behalf or at the behest of government, not only can you kill, you're a hero if you do it. If you kill for government, you're a hero. Well, that clearly says government doesn't listen to God, and God doesn't penalize government for it. So government's clearly more powerful than God.
Yeah, and it seems that God has a bunch of believers who are all mixed up because a lot of people are killing in the name of God too, even if he says don't do it.
Exactly. Same thing. Good point.
Yeah.
Same thing. But yet you're made a hero. If you kill at behest of government, shoot, they got holidays for you. They'll pay the National Football League to honor you. Did you
Yeah.
catch that one?
Yeah.
Boy, did that get swept under the rug quick. When they found out in the defense bill, our tax dollars were paying the billionaire owners of the NFL to honor the veterans.
What do you make of that? What's going on now with Kaepernick and this, and kneeling for the national
Well,
anthem?
first of all, that's a slap in the face to me as a veteran. That these billionaire football owners have to get paid to honor me. Now, Kaepernick, I support him 100%. You don't have to agree with what he's protesting if you do or don't, but you need to support his right to do it. Because if we take away Colin Kaepernick's right to not stand for the flag, one thing people need to remember clearly: you can't mandate patriotism. You can't force patriotism. The last people who forced patriotism was 1930s Germany. They were called Nazis. That was forced patriotism. Patriotism is earned. A government earns your patriotism. A government can't mandate or make you be patriotic. They have to earn it. And Colin Kaepernick, whether you agree with what he's doing or not, should be supported in his right to protest. That's what makes our country great. Well, you saw the second time he did it, who was standing next to him? That Green Beret that wrote an op-ed piece in his favor, stating he didn't agree with him, but he supported his right to do it, and that's what he defended our country to have that right. And you notice the people who protest the most are the ones that were never in the military.
Right. Does that madden you when you see that people simply don't understand the two-way street that freedom really is? Because he has the freedom to do it in that he doesn't have to stand for it. And then other people have the freedom to mock him, so no one's saying they don't have the freedom to mock him, but that people don't understand that sort of social contract that we have.
Well, it was like when I was governor. I tried to tell people, look, with freedom comes the freedom to be stupid. It's a yin and a yang. If you're going to accept freedom, humans are going to make stupid decisions.
Yeah.
You have to accept that as part of freedom. That the freedom, and like I told my people, you can't legislate stupidity. You can't make every time a person does something stupid, you can't make it against the law.
Right.
Like, to me, the most asinine law in America, it's against the law to commit suicide. Well, if the person's successful, how do you prosecute him?
Right.
And if he's not, you're going to put him in jail because he tried to kill himself?
Yeah.
And that leads to my book, Marijuana Manifesto. How can you put people in jail for committing a crime against themselves? Now, it might be stupid to use drugs. Maybe, maybe not, depending on who you are. But you're making it against the law and putting you in prison because you commit a crime against yourself in a free society?
Yeah. So in this regard, would you say that you're fully libertarian? Because that strikes me as a very libertarian view. You're saying do what you want with your own body, big whoop.
And do what you want in life as long as you don't harm anyone else. You do what you're free to do, as long as you don't harm another person or force them to do something that's not free will for them.
Yeah.
And as far as doing drugs, hey, read my book. For 160 years, marijuana was the economic drive to the entire United States of America. Did you know that the British would take marijuana in lieu of money?
I did not know that.
Yes, because they needed it for sales so they could colonize, sails on their ships, rope, all of that. Well, England's only the size of New York State. They couldn't have the room to grow it. So they made the colonists grow it so that they could take it and use it for their armada and their big fleet. I cover it all in the book. So for 160 years, marijuana was the economic engine that drove the United States economy. It wasn't cotton until they invented the cotton gin, because marijuana was easier to harvest.
Yeah. So what do you make of the way that the feds, and Obama particularly, has dealt with marijuana? Because we know that in a lot of states now it's medicinally legal. We've got a couple recreational legal. I'm here in California. I have a license for it, and I don't even smoke that often. But I thought if I'm going to do it, let me go ahead and get the license.
Sure.
But Obama and the feds have come in and they close medicinal dispensaries here, even
Yeah,
though they're legal by the state.
Yeah, well, they want people to suffer. I'll tell you what made me so passionate on this. I won't say who because I respect people's privacy of health, but someone very close to me, marijuana has given me back my standard of living.
Wow.
That's how powerful, because someone close to me developed an epileptic seizure condition at a later age and was seizing 4 times a week. And I was there. I had to deal with this seizure. Well, the person was put on 4 pharmaceutical drugs, one at a time. None of them worked. They all had horrible side effects, and the seizures continued. The person then went to Colorado at the time where medical was legal, obtained it. The seizures immediately stopped. Now the person can get it in Minnesota because it's legal there now. And for 2 years now, this person has not had a seizure.
Yeah.
And is completely weaned off the pharmaceuticals completely. So it's the marijuana that is stopping the epileptic seizures. So to Barack Obama and all our government, how dare you make people suffer because of your short-sightedness and money? Because it all comes back to money. If they legalize it, they want big pharma to run it. So the big corporation will reap the profits.
Yeah.
They don't want it to where poor people can grow it in their backyard and be able to use it. Like when I grew up in South Minneapolis, every summer my mom had a tomato patch. We didn't have a big yard. We're in the inner city. Yet she would have enough tomatoes. We'd eat fresh tomatoes all summer when they came. Well, you can do the same thing with marijuana, which means poor people don't have to pay the system to get it and use it. There's the rub.
You know, the irony here, of course, is that all of these prescription drugs that everybody's taking, all you have to do is watch any of the commercials. The commercials, half of the commercials telling you about the side effects. And then with the ultimate irony, it's usually marijuana that will deal with those side effects. So what do we do? So do we need basically like Starbucks to come in and say we're going to start corporatizing marijuana?
No, you don't want corporations taking control.
Well, in terms of the legal part of it.
Okay, look at it this way. I don't like Budweiser beer. I would rather have some microbrew or some brew that's handmade in Minnesota and doesn't sit in a can on a shelf for months before I buy it in the liquor store. Well, that's what you can do if you eliminate the corporations from marijuana. Then you'll have local, it'll be locally grown, it'll be local everything. And that's why in Ohio it failed, because they had picked out only 2 corporations that would control the whole thing. And the marijuana smokers said, bullshit. That's bull crap. We want it to where anybody can grow it, anyone can use it. We want it free like the plant is. The plant grows wild. It was here before we got here and ran off the Indians or the Native Americans. It was growing here. So why shouldn't it be able to grow wild and you be able to harvest it without having to pay the government to do it?
Yeah, I'm with you. So where do you stand on legalization in general? Obviously, you're fully for legalizing marijuana, but that always then it harkens the next question, which is, well, does he want to legalize cocaine and heroin and everything else down the road? Yeah.
Yes. Here's why. Addiction is a medical problem. Addiction's a disease. You can be addicted to food. All right? Tomorrow morning, let's imagine, go to a hypothetical. Let's say tomorrow morning we could magically make Starbucks and all caffeine coffee disappear. What do you think would happen to society tomorrow morning if all these addicts, and I use the term addicts because they are addicted, and people need to understand that. If you have to have coffee in the morning, how dare you talk about any other drug?
Yeah, I mean, my head would literally explode in the morning. I can't function.
See, I've had 2 sips in my life and spit it out both times. To me, it tastes like crap.
Really?
And so I don't drink coffee, and I'm hyper enough. I don't need caffeine to get going. Well, the point I'm making is everybody's addicted to something. Obesity is a huge problem in our country because of people are addicted to eating. Now, if they push themselves away from the table and exercise, you won't be obese and eat the right foods. But do we limit them? No. And like when they make it legal, it's not really legal, even in Colorado. Let me give you the example. I could drive to Colorado tomorrow, right? And I could pull a semi in, and I could fill that semi up with tobacco, couldn't I?
Sure.
I could buy as many cigarettes as I wanted and fill the semi up. I could drive to 5 liquor stores and I could buy all their booze and fill the semi up, and nobody'd question me as long as my credit card could pay for it.
Right.
I could buy as much. Yet, marijuana, a Colorado resident can only buy 1 ounce at a time, and if you're not from Colorado, you can only get a half an ounce. That ain't freedom.
Yeah.
That means it's still highly restricted. So when they talk about it's legal now, no, it isn't really.
Interesting.
Because they still limit how much you can buy. And why should the government have any say-so whatsoever in how you spend your money, or if you want to buy, 45 outboard motor engines, even though you don't have a boat?
Right.
You know, if you want to do that, you have the freedom to do that. Well, that's freedom.
Right. Meanwhile, if you buy a pressure cooker, you're on a CIA watch list or something.
Maybe. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, and so it still isn't free because it's so heavily restricted right now. And for what? For what? Now, do you know who did it? William Randolph Hearst.
Really?
The big guy with the newspapers back in the 30s.
I drove by his that castle a couple months ago.
Here's why. He owned 26 newspapers, and marijuana and hemp make better paper than wood. He owned thousands of acres of timberland. So he bought off the Republicans and Democrats, got them to make marijuana federally illegal, so it forced us to buy his timber to make paper.
Man, when you start linking this stuff together, it's, as you said earlier, it's all down to money.
Follow the money.
So one more thing on marijuana, and then let's talk about those Democrats and Republicans, because I have a feeling you have a couple things to say about them as well.
Okay.
Is the most fascinating part about marijuana that it's almost the reverse of every other vice. So for example, with booze, if you drink, we know you build a resistance to it. You need more to drink. If you do smoke crack or snort coke or drink coffee, you always need more. Marijuana, I find, and I can firmly say this for me, I used to smoke a lot of marijuana. Now I could maybe take 1 puff and I'm good for hours, and I do that maybe once a week. So it actually has like a built-in regulation system to it too.
Well, actually, maybe, but what you may be facing is this. It's more powerful today than what it was years ago because of the strains and the way they're able to grow it.
Right.
Now, that's not bad. And let me explain. It's more healthy for you to be able to take 1 puff than having to smoke the whole joint.
Sure.
See, it's the same as booze. Okay, you can go out and buy a liqueur that's maybe 20%, or you can go buy 151 rum.
Right.
Well, which one's going to knock you into tomorrow quicker?
Right.
The 151 rum is going to, because of its content. Well, in the case of marijuana, if it's more potent, you're never going to die from it. The great thing about marijuana, you can't OD it.
Nobody's died from it.
You're not going to die from it. You can die from overdosing alcohol easily and all these other, but marijuana you can't. And if it's more powerful, it means you smoke less. You might be able to have 1 joint. If you're a prolific smoker who smokes all day, 1 joint may last you the whole day.
Yeah.
You take 1 in the morning, 1 at lunch, 1 in the evening, and 1 before bed.
Yeah. When I got my license, I went to the dispensary and I was looking around. You know, they got it in chocolate and in water
Edibles,
and
sure,
edibles.
edibles.
every which way, and vaping and all that stuff. And I looked at the guy and I was like, "Do you have any weed in weed form?" Because I just wanted like old school weed. He looked at me like I was a little weird, but they eventually had it for me.
Nah, he really didn't. He was probably doing that just because the other stuff might be more expensive. Again, follow the money. It is utterly foolish now. We've spent, since the war on drugs started in 1972 by Nixon, We've spent close to $1 trillion fighting it.
Putting people in jail for doing something recreationally for themselves.
Yeah, and they're not harming anyone. Like my famous quote, marijuana is to rock and roll what beer is to baseball. Imagine if you went to the ball game and you couldn't have a hot dog and a beer. Well, when you go to a rock concert in the 60s and 70s, when I grew up, you didn't have to have pot, you just went there. People would light a joint and send it down the aisle.
People would not be happy. We would have riots.
They wouldn't be happy at all.
Yeah.
And yet they won't let you smoke pot at a rock concert. It's ridiculous.
I went to a Journey concert in Orange County about a year ago, and I got narked while my friend and I were puffing on a little joint. I mean, can you believe that? Outdoor concert, by the way.